I'm sure you've seen all the hype surrounding OG Fortnite, but you know what? F that. It's time to take an actual trip down memory lane and look at Rocket League before the Epic Games takeover. We're talking about an era where real men played the game, and instead of 11-year-old Fortnite players, we had truck driving neckbeards making up the numbers. Now that was a good era of Rocket League. But jokes aside, I think it's worth looking back on the pre-free-to-play era and maybe draw some interesting comparisons to the current state of the game. So, without further ado, here is an overview of maybe some more nostalgic days of Rocket League. I guess one benefit of OG Rocket League was that it actually wasn't free-to-play. Now I know this is going to be controversial because free-to-play was a great thing, right? And I think it still is. I still feel like Rocket League should have gone free-to-play. But at the same time, there was definitely some big bonuses to not being free-to-play. And that was the fact that you didn't have as much smurfs and boosted accounts. And it meant that for 99% of normal people, you wouldn't go out and buy an extra copy of Rocket League just to smurf. I mean, that's absurd. And in general, the whole process of smurfing was a lot harder to actually carry out back in the old days, which was actually quite a big plus and meant the ranks were a lot more clear and a lot more equivalent to your skill level. But now I want to mention something different that I actually really liked about the older versions of Rocket League. Now it goes without saying that before all those map updates and many retexturings that the game's gone through, Rocket League had definitely a much brighter feeling to it. Take Utopia Coliseum for example. Now that map looked like it was bathing in the sun a lot more than it does now. If you compare it in a 2017 and 2024 comparison, side by side on both the PS4 versions, and this is clearly because of the many updates and I guess the kind of retexturing of the maps. Kind of the same with Fortnite really. You can see that those mid 2010s to late 2010s graphics, which were much brighter, slowly started to fade away from games. From 2017 to 2024, there is a difference. And look, I know it's not a big difference, but I really do think that having a more cheerful and I guess brighter looking aesthetic to the maps really makes it look better. Like, that's just my opinion. I prefer much brighter graphics. It's not like the game looks bad now. I think it looks pretty good, but definitely preferred when the game was a little bit more bright. You can see this with Beckwith Park, you can see it with Manfield and DFH Stadium. There's a few maps out there that have definitely gone through a visible makeover. But we're not here to just talk about the graphics because there's also the gameplay. And the gameplay was what really felt different. Of course, it was before the era of free-to-play, which meant that there was less players, meaning that there was less strain on the servers. So you definitely had a little bit more of a smooth experience. Now I'm not saying that Rocket League had buttery smooth servers, but ghost hits were much more rare than they are now, and that's understandable considering the fact we have thousands and thousands of more players going into the game every single day, causing the game to be, a little overloaded because, let's face it, Rocket League is a very challenging game for servers to handle. Look at how many hits that have to be registered per second. And while Rocket League has never really had smooth servers, let's admit that Epic, a company that has literally billions of dollars in value, did not make much meaningful steps towards improving the service. Okay, I guess there was that one update where they improved protection against DDoS attacks, pretty much about it really in terms of actual good server updates. And I get that Rocket League is a challenging game to really make for servers, but let's be honest, it's just absurd now. I mean, you can compare Fortnite and Rocket League. I know Fortnite has much bigger servers, but the fact that I'm on 60 ping and even 100 ping and the server's lagging, whereas on Fortnite I'm on like 6 ping, it's such a big difference, which it's almost just depressing to look at because it should not be that big of a gap. I guess that's really the main side effect of the game going free to play and being purchased by Epic, but it's something we have to live with, and as much as ghost hits are a lot more frequent, it's not completely game breaking, and at least to some extent, it's playable. You know what the biggest difference between now and the older days of Rocket League really was? Well, it's a fact that Psyonix visibly cared more about the game. You would see so much more interactions between Psyonix staff and members of the community, and to put it simply, the game was community oriented, unlike nowadays. You would see montages from the freestyling community on the main start screen of Rocket League, whereas now freestyling if anything is looked down upon rather than encouraged by Psyonix. And around that time of 2017, we had creator flags being put into the game, which was once again just another sign that Psyonix really cared about trying to build this community with its creators and of course their fans. And not only that, but the developers themselves would actually go out of their way to credit creators of certain new mechanics, which in my opinion was really cool to see, especially from Psyonix themselves. Nowadays, there's finally some attempts to try bridge the gap between the community, and I guess the squishy tag was a pretty cool addition and a step in the right direction, but let's be honest, it doesn't really compare to the Psyonix we saw before they merged with Epic in that purchase of Rocket League. It just seemed like a company that appreciated the player base more, and that's something that a lot of people seriously valued back then. And look, I'm not going to say that we had an absolutely incredible community. I mean, it still had some hilarious downsides to it, but what game doesn't have a questionable community? And what is really obvious is that the truck driving neckbeards that were playing this game were replaced by the raging preteen children which throw a tantrum and decide to forfeit even though the game is still winnable. At least the neckbeards had some character. Like, it's getting to the point where it's annoyingly frequent, and I don't understand why. What's the point in completely demoralizing your teammates by prematurely forfeiting and proceeding to throw the game on purpose? It just doesn't make sense to me. It clearly seems like there's been a shift towards having a younger player base, and while I do see the reasons behind that, it also brings a whole kind of new toxicity and annoying circumstances, which I've actually mentioned in this video a couple of weeks ago. But to really summarize this point, it feels like there's been a definite negative shift of attitude within the community, and it's probably been amplified, especially in the last couple of years. And I see quite a few others mention this with very valid reason, because it's surprising to see the amount of players that you'll encounter which seem to hate everything and anyone around them. Ultimately, I'm not looking to romanticize the older days of Rocket League, but the difference is that at least they're becoming a lot more clear now, and we can see that cared a little bit more about trying to play as a team. And to go back to my point about the game being community oriented, that actually meant that at least in the OG days of Rocket League, you had some tweaks in the gameplay based off of feedback from the community that Psyonix would get. Like, they'd actually try to listen to us a little bit more, which I think is very, very important for any game which is trying to build itself into the mainstream. And it's not like I dislike Rocket League. I mean, I've liked it for so long, I'm not going to just stop liking just because the years have gone by and Epic have made changes. I mean, sure, I'm not happy with them, but it's still a pretty fun game. It's just that nowadays, maybe in smaller doses it's more fun, because I feel like that kind of grind that I used to go through to try get up the ranks doesn't really hit the same. I guess that's just me really, it's not everyone. And after all, this video is just about my opinion, so you're free to disagree with it. There's free speech, you can go down below, comment whatever you like, I don't mind. I'm sure if you've been around Rocket League before all the drops, blueprints, and credits were a thing, you'd remember the crates. Now those bad boys were the ultimate dopamine accelerator.
I'll take anything in here. Oh my god!
It goes without saying that opening crates was just so satisfying. I mean, the animation was really, really good, and it just reminds you of CSGO, which is actually kind of cool. And now at the time, you also had your crate openings with people like John, Picapixel, Athena, Woofles, a lot more than I'm probably missing out, but on that specific side of Rocket League, crates were actually kind of fun. Not to mention the sheer adrenaline rush from landing on a black market or pulling a sick painted item that was worth like 1,000,000 keys back in the day. Oh, and trading was actually worth it back then, and really popular, as it felt like people were genuinely invested in it at the time. After all, we're talking about an era where you'd frequently see people typing out the word trade in between matches or after matches, and honestly, it's one of those things I miss the most about that time, and it really sucks that we can't get back to that. Okay, I'll admit I wasn't great at trading, and yes, I wasn't exactly rich. I feel like Epic could have done a lot more with the trading system. I'll never stop preaching that Rocket League should have had some form of community market for trading, just like CSGO does on Steam. Instead, we got trading removed, and before we actually got trading removed, it got paywalled. So I don't really see what the big point of keeping trading just to remove it was. They might as well just removed it from the start, because all they did was just crash it with free to play and then just make it completely obsolete. And without having to exaggerate or oversell it to you, opening crates and trading were definitely a load of fun back in the day. But continuing on this topic, let's also talk about blueprints, because I'm sorry, but what was the point of adding blueprints? The most useless item in the entire game right now. You basically have these just sitting in your inventory, you get them after some games, and if you want, for $10 only, you can get some really boring goal explosion, which will cost way more than you'd actually could have gotten it when trading was a thing. And that's, I guess, the biggest disappointment for me, especially when Epic has so many things that they could have worked with. It kind of sucks really, because you had all sorts of content on that side of Rocket League alone. And as much as it wasn't part of the core gameplay, nor was the most significant thing in the world, it still felt like kind of a valuable feature to have, especially for building up inventories, for getting cool items that you want to trade up to, or just for the fun of it.